Brendan has a question for Mr. Visconti.
What structural changes would you make to state entitlement programs if you are elected governor? Specifically, which ones would you adjust, eliminate, or keep?
Well, it's kind of funny. A couple days ago, I received a message on Facebook from a woman in Hartford who had gone through the welfare system, raised in it, born in it, and wants a way out. She found a way out. She asked me a question, Mr. Visconti, would you be for prorating the welfare system so that people can stay, especially women, can stay in the welfare system and have some of the entitlements as they try to reach $18 to $25 an hour into a real living wage where they can be self-sufficient without losing benefits. And I said to her, yes, I would, and we're meeting this week. It's something that I think probably everyone in this room has thought about one time or another. Democrats like to tell us it's all fixed, the safety net's there, but these women want to be able to get out of welfare, and that is number one. Drug testing for welfare is another thing. People who receive welfare, there's something that's been spoken about across the country. I think there's abuse and fraud in the welfare system. And those two areas right now, if we can get the inner city people to be able to get to work, feel safe about getting a job, knowing that they can get their families and move forward and unite as a family, and cut out the fraud and waste that's in the entitlement in the inner cities, we're well on our way to becoming a state that can be proud of the people in our inner cities rather than doing what the Democrats do, lock them into a cycle of poverty. I'm from Hartford, went to Buckley High School, and I went to school with many of these kids that I used to hire as adults, and I know it personally.
Thank you. Ms. Dean.
Well, what you never want to be as a state is the state that has the most generous benefits. It's a losing strategy. So when I hear that people actually come here from other states for benefits or from Puerto Rico for benefits, that's a problem. And we need to address that. We want to have a safety net for those who can't help themselves, and of course there's always private charity, but we need a government safety net. But you never want a safety net that's overly generous. It's the same thing when you're a parent. You want to help your kids, but you don't want to do their work for them, because it's a recipe for failure if you are too generous. So one of the things, or two of the things that I think that we need to focus on that empower people in the inner city and people who are down and out, people who've lost a job. One is job training, and job training for jobs that exist, not jobs that in theory might exist, but jobs that actually exist. So recently I did a Google search to find out, is there anyone hiring in America? What are they hiring for? And I found that in Louisiana, there's a company hiring 700 welders. Well, we can train people to be welders. We can even help them move out of Connecticut. They don't need to be warehoused here. We don't need to be paying to warehouse human talent that can't find a job, won't find a job, doesn't have the training for the jobs that are here, and that really should be moving somewhere else. So the state of Hawaii put people who are homeless on they paid their airline tickets to come back to the mainland to find jobs here. We can help people get training. We can help people get parenting skills. We have to stop rewarding them to be unskilled and unemployed.
Thank you. Mr. Bowden. Could you repeat the question?
What structural changes would you make to state entitlement programs if you are elected governor? And specifically, which ones would you adjust, eliminate, or keep?
I think there's a number of changes that you can make right off the bat. The first thing is we have to look at the delivery of the services that we provide for our residents. One of the things that I've done in Danbury very successfully is I've spun off our social service department and our social service functions to the nonprofit sector. Nonprofits can do it cheaper, more efficiently, and save all of us a lot of money than having a state employee do that same kind of work. The other thing I just want to mention is we have some very good workforce investment board training centers for job training. And I think it's important that we really put our job training program on steroids, if you will, because of the damage that's been done to the workforce at roughly age 45 to 65. Those are the people that are struggling the most to re-enter the workforce because they don't have the skills that companies are looking for today. I also think we ought to open up our community college, we ought to open up our state university system, and even our technical schools, because I think there's a real opportunity there for more job training for our residents. Look, it's easy to go out and give people a give out. It's much harder to get those people engaged, get them the skills they need, and get them looking forward to a better future. Kind of like the big discussion about the minimum wage. We shouldn't be talking about the minimum wage. We should be talking about the maximum wage. How can we maximize everybody's earning potential in the state of Connecticut?
Thank you. Mr. McKinney?
Several years ago, the Democrats in the legislature changed what was our state general assistance program into linking it with the federal program called low-income adults. I fought that because we argued at the time when you link yourself with the federal government, instead of being a state general assistance program, you now are an entitlement, and there are things that you cannot do to change those. So the first thing we have to do is go after waste, fraud, and abuse. I've proposed creating an Office of Inspector General that will have subpoena and audit power. Look, we know there's waste, fraud, and abuse in all of these government programs, and the state of Connecticut does nothing to go after it. Those are your hard-earned dollars, and we should not let that money be used the way it is for that kind of, we should eliminate that waste, fraud, and abuse. The second thing we need to do is we need to change the nature. We need to give people incentives to work instead of saying if they work and make some money, they'll lose their programs. Everybody wants to help people, but what we need to do is provide them with incentives so they can go get jobs, whether it's job training, whether it's going back to school, VOTEC schools, community colleges. We need to offer these people a path. We're going to say, look, we're going to help you, but your responsibility is to train yourself and go to work. There has to be a linkage between working and getting government assistance. Right now, there's incentives not to work. And those are the two biggest changes we can make. One is eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. Two, provide incentives for people to work.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
Yeah, first of all, I think we all have to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who need help, particularly when the economy turns down or other bad things happen to them that are circumstantial or related to health issues or mental health issues. But the help that we try and provide people very often, even though it is well intended, has adverse consequences. And I just want to give you 3 examples, and these are the types of things that I would come in as governor and seek to change. Senator McKinney mentioned disincentives. There was an article that I read recently that I think showed that if you take all the cumulative benefits to an unmarried woman in a city in Connecticut, that she has the equivalent income of somewhere in the mid or high $20,000 to going out and working for a minimum wage job. And so there's a disincentive for these people to go out and work and reestablish themselves in the workplace and work out. That's something we simply need to change. We have laws here in Connecticut where people who are incarcerated, when they get out, it's very, very difficult for them to enter job training programs. They can't get scholarships and many other things that they are disqualified for. These people, we all have an incentive to help these people get jobs and re-enter the workforce and become productive citizens. And finally, our policies divide families. Very often break up marriages are a result of people not being able to get married.
Thank you. Mr. Loretti?
Yes, this is the elephant in the room. This is truly the challenge that the next governor faces and the next president faces. Our country is plagued with this problem. There were some things that were mentioned here already that I agree with. We've got to do a better job with waste, fraud, and abuse. And in this day and age of technology, we ought to be able to resolve the majority of those issues. It was also mentioned about the delivery of services. And that's certainly, you understand that when you run a business or you run a city. Because, as I mentioned earlier, as your cost of business rises, you can't modify or change your prices to accommodate the increase in the cost of doing business. So these are some of the challenges that must be addressed. In America, we've always helped people. We are about a hand up and not a handout. And that's really what we've got to be more focused on. We can't help people if we don't have our financial health. So, again, getting back to the essence of what I think that this campaign is about is solving our financial issues, and certainly the entitlements are a big part of that equation. And there are many of them, and there are many different areas that you have to get into. And, quite honestly, you also need the support of the legislature.
Thank you.